Welcome back to the UK, and dare I say it, America back on the world stage.
Thank you.
Your reaction to that absolutely phenomenal election, what are you expecting it?
I was expecting it, but I'm too superstitious to say it. We worked so hard as a family. My father worked so tirelessly. I was out there every single day. My wife was out there every single day. She was running the RNC. I was in every state around the country. Don was out there. I mean, it was really kind of a big family effort, but my father did the impossible. And this wasn't a small win. This was a gigantic win, not in terms of just the electoral college. He had, 312 electoral votes, which is, one of the highest ever, but also won the popular vote in the United States by, close to 5 million votes. And it was a tremendous victory. And, it's total vindication for so much of the nonsense that they put us through for so many years.
A massive mandate, of course. Did you have any internal polling suggesting that the win would be as emphatic as it was?
Yeah, we did. And in fact, every single time I looked at a poll, it just reinforced the fact that we were going to win. Yet every single time you turn on the TV, you'd have kind of very liberal stations in the United States, and many of the same ones over here. You know them as well as I do. And they'd be kind of spinning a counter narrative to that. And it made you actually question, the true lead that you were seeing on paper. And all the data points that we saw came through very early in the night. We knew we were going to win the election. And it was, as I said, it was great kind of vindication, but it was a massive referendum in the United States. People were sick and tired of the nonsense. People were sick and tired of the liberal policies. They were sick and tired of seeing what was happening to our country, to our patriotism, to our economy. They were sick and tired of seeing the wars break out all over the world. They were sick and tired of seeing us spend hundreds of billions of dollars in every war on in foreign lands and not actually invest in our own people. They were sick and tired of high taxes. In fact, you're dealing with many of the same things over here, but there was a massive referendum in the United States where people said, we've had enough. And we want sanity back, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And I think you're going to see the same thing follow in a lot of elections around the world, really to come.
Yeah, we'll get onto the course in just a sec. But I was saying to you off air, there's a feeling here that we're maybe 4 or 5 years behind the US. We've just, of course, elected a Labour government, which kind of feels like people over here are saying it's kind of the start of our Biden era, and we need to get through that. And actually, it feels like now that people like your father, the incoming administration, people like Elon Musk, they seem to care, this is the argument, they seem to care more about the UK at the moment than, say, some of the politicians leading the charge over here.
I have a general rule. I try not to opine on politicians in foreign lands. It just never ends up well. But many of the things that you're seeing over here are things that we saw, as you said, 5-10 years ago. Censorship.
Yeah.
You're seeing some of the issues that the UK is running into. You see the war on farmers right now. It's very sad to see, but we saw this in the United States in a very big way. You saw the war on oil and gas. We saw that in the United States, and people frankly revolted when their oil and gas prices went through the roof, when they could no longer afford to heat their homes, when they could no longer afford to, drive their cars, when, gas prices went up 4x compared to my father's, first term in office. And people revolted. And I suspect the same sentiments are going to happen on this side of the pond and, in the UK and in Europe in general.
Yeah, indeed. Lots going on here. You touched on the farmers' protest. We'll get onto that. But welcome back to the UK. It's great to have you. The new course here is opening when? Summer next year, is that right?
It's going to open up in July, and it's going to be the best anywhere. We've built the best 36 holes anywhere on Earth. And there's actually no question, right? And I can say that with true confidence without trying to be bombastic. Obviously the old course, which is the first 18 holes we built in Aberdeen and in Scotland, it's rated the top of every single list around the world. And we're building a second course that is second to none anywhere. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any course anywhere on Earth that can beat it. Is that good. And we have an unbelievable team here. And I'm telling you, we put our heart and soul into every inch of it. Nothing is good enough. We push and we push and we push. And I've spent, hundreds of hours walking that course and know every little corner of it. And every single time we refine, we make it better. And it's the Great Dunes of Scotland. It's the greatest natural land on Earth. And truly, it might be the last links course ever built, in the UK because of, various regulations and other things that they're doing. But we're so proud of it. Trump Scotland, Trump Aberdeen, it's going to be the greatest golf facility anywhere on the planet.
And you walked the course today, I think, or tried to at least. What was the snow like? Could you see the floor?
A lot of snow. A lot of snow. It was wet and snowy, but
you hit some balls.
I was no. You're not finding any balls out there today. It's either going to bury, and you're certainly not finding them. But no, it was an amazing day. I mean, we've assembled the greatest team on Earth. I mean, these are the greatest shapers, greatest golf contractors. I mean, these are the artists of the golf world, and I mean, immense talent, and the greatest architects and the greatest professionals. And then we instill kind of, unlimited money, because that's what it takes to create the best.
Yeah.
But tremendous heart and soul, which it also takes to create the best. And we're a company that cares. We've invested a lot in Scotland, between Turnberry, Aberdeen. It's a country we adore. It's a country we love. Obviously, it's the birthplace of my grandmother, and kind of our genetic roots. And it's a place that I really kind of consider at this point a second home. I'm not sure if there's any foreigner who's probably been to this country more times than I have. If you look at my passport, I filled many passports with the stamps over the years. But we've been to Scotland hundreds of times, and love the people, love the culture, love the land, and obviously love the heritage.
Do you, with this investment, it's a massive sign that, of course, you believe in Britain, you believe in the community up here in Scotland. Do you feel you get that back?
Yeah. No, not always, to tell you the truth. But that doesn't matter. Listen, we're big boys. We don't need it to come back. But I feel like we get it back from the people, because I think we're beloved by the Scots. I can't tell you how much support we have every single time I come over here. The love is tremendous. I can tell you the people in the local communities around us, they appreciate what we did. We saved Turnberry from the brink of absolute ruin, and this is the greatest course on earth, and one of the greatest hotels on earth. We put hundreds of millions of dollars into it. I was over here 50, 60, 70 times as we were building that course. We restored every window, every crown molding, and we did so with a lot of passion, a lot of heart. And the people adore us in Ayrshire and those areas for that. And obviously what we've built, here on the east coast of Scotland and northeast, it's unbelievable. And I think the people are truly appreciative that, we're a company that comes in and we put our money where our mouth is, and we actually invest dollars and we help the local economy. And listen, there are people that take their shots at us. We see that every single day. We saw that last week, as a matter of fact. I think it's foolish. I think it's counterproductive in so many ways, but believe me, it doesn't keep me up at night. There are plenty of other things in the world that keep me up at night, but that's not one of them.
Yeah, I think even the Scottish Greens, they had a pop saying that the course was not right for Scotland, and having a moan about that. But in actual fact, it's one of the most environmentally friendly courses in the world. Is that right?
Ever built.
Yeah.
I'm out there today, and the wildlife that you see, and I can tell you it wasn't like that before we really started building. And you see the swans and the ducks and the the roe deer and the foxes all over the place. It's a beautiful thing. But no, we've built a true national treasure. I don't think that there's 36 holes on earth that even come close to what we've built in Aberdeen. And obviously Turnberry, in terms of Turnberry, speaks for itself, right? Everybody knows the legendary Turnberry, but we've built two of the greatest properties anywhere. We've put our blood, sweat, and tears into them, and we're immensely proud of them.
Yeah, you can tell. You can tell. Well, it was glorious. There were whispers that your father may open the course next year, but that was before he, of course, won that election win. Do you think we may see him come and officially open the course? I mean, can he even? Is he allowed to do that?
I think he'll be very happy. During his first term as president, I was over here with him, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was really, really beautiful. As a United States president had landed in Prestwick, of all places, and there's Air Force One, and there's the big Trump plane sitting next to it at Prestwick Airport, and it was really, really beautiful. I mean, Marine One, the helicopters are flying around over Turnberry, and I can promise you, my father will be back in the UK. Obviously he loves the UK, he loves Scotland. He'll be back here. He'll certainly be here for the opening. Yeah,
we saw that with the. I don't know if you've seen that clip online of your father on. I think he's on a plane going through the new photographic book.
Yeah,
he's got. You can see the love and the joy he's got for the Royals and so on. Okay, look, tell me about the election night. Internal polling suggested that you knew you were going to win. What were the celebrations like? Oh, Nigel was with you, of course, in Palm Beach. What was it like?
Your Nigel was with us. He was a wonderful man.
What's he like? Was he on good form?
Nigel?
Yeah.
Well, Nigel was probably celebrating more so than anybody in that room, but no, we were all in great form. Listen, we left it all on the field. There's nothing more we could have done. As a family, we ran 20 hours a day, every single day, no sleep, no event after event, interview after event. I mean, there was nothing more as a family we could have done. And to have the victory that we had, again, this wasn't a close call, right? You had every liberal station over here in the US. Yes, it's going to be a very close election. It's going to be razor thin. There was nothing razor thin about the election, right? I mean, we won every single swing state. We won the popular vote, which is unheard of for a Republican to do, but by 5 million, we won, one of the largest electoral college counts. And it was a beautiful night. And I remember going to my father at some point. I was up with our team, and we were getting the raw data in from the States. And I remember coming down after hearing, and I went to him. I go, "We just won Pennsylvania," and this was a couple hours before they actually called Pennsylvania. And he looked at me, and I'm like, the raw data is looking really good. Well, based on the early vote. And then and a minute or two later, Elon Musk was sitting right next to him and all of us. And Elon turns around and, "Sorry, you just won Pennsylvania." And I said, I just said that to him. It was funny, and we all kind of chuckled a little bit. But it was an amazing night. I mean, it was an amazing night. They tortured us for years. The way the media treated us, the way the government treated us, the way they weaponized government. They tried to impeach him twice. They raided his home. They pulled him off of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I mean, they tried to remove him from the ballot in Colorado. They tried to remove him from the ballot in Maine. They weaponized every attorney general against him, against me, every district attorney. I was subpoenaed 111 times for doing absolutely nothing wrong. They made up dirty dossiers. They made up the Russia hoax. And 1,000 other things that the general public didn't even see. And despite that, and by the way, and he got 98% negative media coverage in our country. And despite that, the people of our country came out and overwhelmingly voted him as president of the United States. It was beyond a referendum. It was a referendum on the system. It was a referendum on the deep state. It was a referendum on the media. And it was an entire country standing up and saying, "We've had enough of this nonsense. We want the greatest economy. We want safe borders. We want a safe world. We want America to be the greatest superpower. We want capable leadership. We want somebody fighting for the United States of America, being a cheerleader for the United States of America." All of the things that we haven't had under Joe Biden, all of the things that we wouldn't have had under Kamala Harris. And I could tell you it was a beautiful night, and one that I'll never forget.
Yeah. As you mentioned over here, all the news stations and the chatterati on Twitter were saying it's neck and neck, it's going to be so close. And, I just got the feeling it wasn't. You look at the size of the rallies, the YouTube numbers, and I just knew it wasn't. I even put a little bet on it for over 300 electoral college votes. So thanks to Dad for that.
I like that.
Tell me about the days after the election. When did you go to the UFC? Were you there with the John Jones?
I did go.
Was there,
I did go and Paul Craig, a nice Scottish man who put up a hell of a fight, and what an amazing athlete he is. But yeah, I was at the UFC, and it's funny, we were at Madison Square Garden, and I think around the world most people know Madison Square Garden is, if you've made it to Madison Square Garden, you've made it, right?
Yeah.
And we had a big rally there, and I'll never forget, I got up on the stage and spoke for 10-15 minutes before my father got up. And I mean, you had Madison Square Garden, 25,000 people, every single seat full. And then you had 200,000 people surrounding Madison Square Garden. And this is deep blue New York State. And the love was tremendous. And then obviously, the great victory. And we go back to Madison Square Garden for UFC. And, my father walks into that room and the arena goes crazy.
And you got the belt, and John Jones was doing the dance, and then the crowd was screaming USA.
I mean, it was 100% love. And that's how I feel in the US right now. I mean, again, people want somebody that they know is going to be a fighter for their country. People want somebody who's going to, fix their economy, allow them to live what we call over there the American dream, right? It's so coveted around the world. And listen, the American dream was being lost in America. And, frankly, that same concept is being lost in so many countries around the world. You feel it over here. So much of Europe feels it. So much of the world feels it. Look at all these war-torn zones all over, senseless conflicts that don't need it, right? People's houses are gone. Their apartment buildings are bombed. Their children are killed, beautiful young boys who are 22, 23 years old. They're fighting in dirty trenches. They come around a little corner and they get shot in the head. For what reason?
Thousands a day in Ukraine. Young Russian men, young Ukrainian men.
And you go on YouTube every single night, and the first thing that pops up is some video of some drone blowing some poor kid to smithereens. And you're paying for it, and we're paying for it, and it's crazy, and it's sad, and it's senseless. And I think people want the games to stop. And Donald Trump will stop those games. Trump will stop the wars. He'll stop the nonsense. He'll stop the violence. I think he'll get the hostages back in record time. I think he'll get some of our hostages back before he even enters office. You have Hamas that's now standing down. You have Iran that's taking a very different posture than they were before. He's not even president. He's president-elect. And you already see transformational change around the world. And that's not just good for the United States of America. That's good for world order. That's good for all Western civilization. I mean, that's a net benefit. And I'm proud of him. I'm really, as a son, I'm really proud of what he's accomplished. And trust me, it would have been a hell of a lot easier for this guy to pack it in, say, you know what, this isn't worth it. I've got the most beautiful golf courses in the world. I'll go play Aberdeen every single day. Over the course of a summer, I'll have the greatest summer ever. I'll go play with my grandkids. I've got the best planes. I've got the best properties. I've got the best hotels. I can do anything I want in the world. And, instead the guy goes out every single day, 20 hours a day, and grinds and grinds and grinds. And they put him in freezing cold courtrooms. And yet he grinds and goes to fundraisers late at night and makes it work, and press conference after press conference. And you see the fruits of kind of that labor now in terms of kind of the world. And I think the whole world is viewing life through a very different lens. I think a big weight has been lifted off so many people's backs. I think it's given hope to so many people, and not just in the United States, all around the world. I really think it's restored hope and faith. The same thing can happen in other countries around this world. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And, I think he deserves the credit for all of it.
Well, that moves me on to the UK, because, as you said, it wasn't just a win for America. There's massive cohorts of the population in the UK who's looking to the United States and looking to your father, hoping that he would come back into power to kind of instill some common sense and solve the chaos that's kind of taking over the West. That's happened. There were massive celebrations here. Let me tell you that. There were a lot of very happy people.
Yeah.
However, we are dealing with a particularly interesting, let's say, that new Labour government, new Labour administration. Elon Musk said it was Stalin-like, what was happening here, particularly with the farmers' protests today. Have you seen what's going on with the farmers
I have.
in Britain today?
And we love the farmers. We love the farmers over here. I can say that unequivocally. It's sad what's happening over here, and it was really sad, actually, what was happening to farmers in the United States. And it seems like there's a lot of commonality. The difference is now I think the farmers really have a voice, and I hope the farmers here find the same voice that the farmers in the U.S. found. And by the way, I can say that I have a lot of industries over here who have been totally mistreated. The greatest oil and gas in the world is in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably the greatest in the world, and the way they've been treated is horrible. But the way so many people have been treated, business leaders, we're taxed to death, unable to survive.
Where does that come from? What is the agenda behind that? I mean, as you said, they want to turn Aberdeen, for example, into this rich oil and gas hotspot of the United Kingdom into some net zero quasi paradise. What is the agenda behind that?
All while buying from Russia and buying from Iran. It makes no sense to me. And America was under that same path as well. And again, the people of our country rejected it categorically. And, our path has changed. It's done a 180, 2 weeks ago. You've got the greatest natural resources in the world in Aberdeen, and unlimited oil and gas. And it's a great benefit to all of Europe. And it's a great benefit to a country who's otherwise become dependent on countries around the world who do not have your best interest at heart, or America's best interest. When I say your best interest, really the best interest of the West at heart. But I do feel bad for the farmers, because they've been horribly treated, and I feel bad for those oil and gas workers, and I feel bad for all the people who are being censored every single day. Elon was right. People send out a tweet expressing frustration, expressing this, and all of a sudden they come and they get arrested. That's a very, very dangerous precedent to set. And I hope society rejects it categorically.
So do you agree with Elon Musk that it's echoes of a Stalin-esque state, what's going on right now? Because as you said, we've had journalists who've had knocks at the doors from police.
Listen, I'm not going to go down that road, because it's going to just create clickbait. I think it's very unhealthy when, somebody posts something on Twitter and they get arrested, 3 minutes later, right? I mean, now I come from a country where we have a First Amendment right, and that First Amendment is freedom of speech. It's followed by the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment ensures that you always have freedom of speech, right? And so there's nothing more important to Americans than their First Amendment right to be able to say whatever they want. Now, hey, there can be consequences for saying what you want. You could lose your job, you could do something, but it doesn't mean that the government can come knock on your door and send you to jail because you oppose some liberal view. I think that it's a very dangerous precedent what's getting set if people are getting arrested. Hey, you see the same thing in China right now, right? I mean, there are protests, and the people are literally going to jail for voicing frustration against the government. It's a horribly dangerous, slippery slope, and I I hope it gets rejected as quickly over here as it was rejected in the United States.
Well, lots of Brits would like to know whether I mean, do you think your father would have any influence over this government here in terms of free speech and freedom of expression? I mean, could he lean on our Labour government to?
Listen, at the end of the day, I think my father's going to take care of the United States of America. And I think you're going to have a lot of eyes following the United States in so many ways. That's generally how it works.
So more lead by example as opposed to...
Yeah, lead by example.
Yeah.
I can tell you he's 100% committed to, clearly he's committed to free speech because there's no one that's been censored more than him, right? This is a man that was kicked off of Twitter, kicked off of Facebook, kicked off of Instagram. We created Truth Social, which is our kind of mobile app, as a way for him to communicate to the masses based on the fact that he was censored by everybody else. Now the pendulum has shifted, and the pendulum has shifted in a major way because people spoke out, but also because you had great people like Elon Musk who put an end to that nonsense. And what also happened is this other interesting paradigm. You realize that mainstream media in our country no longer had relevance. And yet these podcasters, literally using iPhones to communicate, were getting 20, 30, 50 times the views of these major networks like CNN and BBC, and who had the biggest newsrooms in the world, the highest paid anchors, and they became irrelevant in the United States of America. You look at the viewership of CNN versus the viewership of Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's doing it in a studio the size of this room with 3 cameras and unpaid guests. And his viewership's 100 times that of CNN. What's happened is the mainstream media in our country has made themselves irrelevant based on the fact that they've always had a view that's so warped, relative to the general sentiment of the American people. And in a way, I actually think it's kind of... it's actually been very healthy for this country. For America, we as a country, and maybe the entire Western world, has actually started digesting media in a very different way than it's ever been digested before.
Well, look what they did just before the polls opened. You had the rally at Madison Square Garden, and they were calling it a Hitler rally and trying to, draw parallels to the Nazi Party. It was just absurd. And I think if you ask most people here, when Kamala Harris came out with that Hitler rhetoric and they made that comparison, I think at that point, most right-thinking people knew they were getting desperate, and it was...
Well, first of all, the Democratic Party in our country has done that every election cycle for the last 40 years. So let's start there, right? So this isn't new. Second of all, I'm pretty sure that Hitler wasn't promoting free speech, small government, the right for people to own firearms, right? I think, I don't think they were, asked to have independent voice, right? And you look at the opposite side, and what are they promoting? They're promoting big government, no right to self-defense, censorship. I mean, if you want to talk about a party that espouses those values, it's kind of interesting. I could draw a lot of comparisons, but I think it's gross and disgusting when you take the worst mass killer in arguably the history of humanity and charge a guy who left a beautiful lifestyle to go save a country.
The no-war president.
Created the greatest economy ever.
Yeah.
No wars, no conflicts, peace through strength, the Abraham Accords, peace in the Middle East, I mean, go through the list, and it's really shocking. But, then what happens is, unfortunately, you have other governments that echo it, other political figures around the world that echo it. You got to be very careful with those kind of words because they're horrible, and it actually kind of takes the edge off of history. And we can't allow that to happen because it's...
Indeed. It's totally insane, juvenile, inane, all the words under the sun. But I guess that is the past now, an emphatic victory. In the UK, we'd love to, we're in this funny place in the UK where we've got the EU on one side and Europe, and then, of course, our friends in America on the other side. I think one of your your father's economic advisors in recent weeks has said that we should stick with the US because you'd care about our interests more than the quote-unquote socialist EU. What's your advice to Britain and to Brits? Who should we side with, the US or Europe? Can we trust the US to take us under your wing and guide us through this sort of new dawn of society?
Well, I think it's America's role to guide everybody through, that kind of new dawn of reality, right? And I'm not just talking about the UK. I'm not just talking about Europe. Certainly those will follow quickly. But I can tell you there's a lot of Middle Eastern countries, a lot of countries in the Gulf that are desperate for America to continue to guide the world. Because when you have a weak power structure in America, you have a weak world. It's just the reality of how it works. Iran wasn't firing hundreds of missiles when you had a strong president. In fact, Iran was bankrupt.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you have a power vacuum. You have a weak president in the United States, and they become rich, they become emboldened, and the world goes to hell.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's just obviously the UK that's looking to follow America. I really do think the whole world is looking to follow.
I guess what I'm talking about is specifically in terms of a trade deal and tariffs. Your father's talks about the need for tariffs to put America first. Would that include the UK? Because there were reports in recent days that tariffs to the UK from the US would cost us around £20 billion to our GDP.
Well, listen, I think that's ultimately his call to make, and I think tariffs are normally in response to something. My father's not a guy who just wants to tariff people just for fun, right? Tariffs are normally a response to something. I mean, China has been sending their crap to America for years and years and years, and we try and send a Ford truck to China. They'll let it sit on a ship for 6 months, and then they'll send it back. And then when we decide to put tariffs on them, they'll say, oh, well, that's not free trade. It's like, well, you wouldn't take our truck, but yet you want to dump all your crap into the United States of America, put all our workers out of jobs. No, that's not going to happen, right? So normally a tariff is really a response to something else. If call it the European Union was tariffing us as they have before, then sure, he would absolutely tariff them. And so I think it really is going to ultimately depend on the actions of various countries. And if true, free, and fair trade can be established, I think there's no one who would love it more than my father. If that can't be established, I think he would use tariffs, yes.
So your feeling is, by default, your father would like a tariff-free agreement with the UK, you think?
Listen, I think my father generally likes free trade. But free trade has not been free. All right. And so people like to hide behind the guise of the words free trade, but it's just the guise of cheap words. Again, it hasn't been free. And so as a country, we've been ripped off by everyone. We've been ripped off by China. We've been ripped off by Vietnam. We've been ripped off by the European Union. We've been ripped off by NATO. We're the only country that was fulfilling our total 4% of GDP to NATO. You had all these other big countries around the world, including Germany at the time, that's contributing 1% to NATO.
And getting gas from Russia at the same time.
Go figure.
Yeah,
go figure. They're making a country wealthy while we're while not contributing their fair share, while we're contributing our 4% of a much larger GDP to these causes. And I'm telling you, that's not going to happen under Donald Trump. I mean, the days of America being stupid are over. I mean, just the days of America being stupid are over. It won't happen. And so I think my father would love nothing better to have a great relationship with the UK. He adores this country. Hence the reason he's put hundreds of millions of dollars of his own money into building the greatest property on earth. There's no place in the world he'd rather have a great relationship with. But again, he still has to protect the financial interests of the United States of America. And so I think he would love to see a great trade deal. I think he'd like to see a trade deal that reciprocated for both parties. I can tell you, if anybody thinks they're going to pull the wool over his eyes and have some kind of one-sided trade arrangement where they're getting all the benefit and the United States is getting none, I can tell you that won't work. And it's not going to work for anybody.
Does the behavior of some labor activists in this country, of course, we had around 100 labor activists, very bizarrely go to the US in key battleground states, Pennsylvania, campaigning for Kamala Harris, Tim Walz. Then we had comments, even post-election, from the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who I guess trebled down on his rhetoric about your dad, calling him a racist, calling him a homophobe. I made the point saying, well, Sadiq Khan said, he doesn't like me because of the color of my skin. I made the very simple point, well, in that case, why is Vivek Ramaswamy leading up the Department of Government Efficiency, and so on and so on. Does the behavior of labor activists, labor MPs, would that stick in your father's mind when it comes to trade deals and tariffs?
I mean, I don't think it helps. Do I think it's tone deaf that there are certain leaders of certain countries who 2 days before a U.S. election comes out and calls it incorrectly for the opposite party? That in the biggest blowout election in arguably American history. Do I think that helps foreign relations? No, I don't think that helps foreign relations. Was it smart? I mean, I think Donald Trump could be the greatest president in the history of the United States to the United Kingdom. You might want to pick up the phone and just say congratulations. I don't know why that's below some of these people. I don't know why that's, it's just once in a while, just being nice and kind and decent can get you a lot.
Our Prime Minister Keir Starmer, we understood he did speak to your father post-election. Is that right? Are you aware of that?
They had a nice conversation.
What about Sadiq Khan?
I don't know if they've spoken. But I do see the rhetoric, and again, it doesn't keep me up at night. But oftentimes I reflect on the fact that I think it's just foolish. Foolish when you have somebody who would otherwise be the greatest advocate for maybe the two greatest allies that the world could ever have, which is the United States and the UK. We have been bound at the hip. We have been bound culturally for so long. We have the same interests globally. And it's sometimes infuriating when you have leaders that, maybe want to get a couple additional clicks on Twitter or Facebook. I don't even think it does that for them, to tell you the truth. But they run out, they say bombastic things, usually call it wrong, by the way. I don't think that does help relations between two countries. It would have been a lot easier had they just stayed on the sideline, let the people of a country, of an independent nation vote, and then embrace whoever the ultimate leader was that was chosen by the people of that nation.
I don't know how you communicate with your father and your siblings and so on. Do you have a WhatsApp group or anything going on? How does it work?
Now, my father's not on WhatsApp, but now our siblings, we're pretty funny. We do a pretty good job communicating amongst each other.
Do you ever share sort of a news stories from the US? For example, when the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, made those inane comments a few weeks ago, do you ever pop off a message and say, "Oh, Dad, Sadiq's been at it again"?
Honestly, I don't give a damn about the mayor of London.
Yeah.
These are not things that keep me up at night. Listen,
Does your dad?
I can tell you he does not either. I run a great company. I'm responsible for tens of thousands of employees around the world. We operate the best hotels, the best golf courses, the best estates, residential buildings, commercial buildings. And I fought like hell to get a man that I really believe in elected to the presidency. And I hold down a lot of other functions in our lives and our families, and I'm immensely proud of all of that. I can promise you I don't go to bed at night thinking about what one of 200 world leaders thinks at any given moment.
Yeah.
If I did, I would be a basket case. I would probably have been thrown in rehab at this point, and I wouldn't be able to function going through life.
I do often wonder how your father does it. I guess.
You know how he does it?
How?
The same as me. He doesn't give a damn.
Yeah.
Right? He understands it's just a game. He understands the same people who oftentimes call it wrong will come and go 300 times before he does. The same people that were fighting him 20 years ago have faded into oblivion. And guess what? He just won the United States presidency. And I think when you start compartmentalizing things as a game, whether it be the media, whether it be certain foreign leaders who say foolish things that are counterproductive to their own societies and trade relations and so many other things later on, when you start letting those things bother you, I'm telling you, it's just it's going to weigh you down. Focus on what you have to do as a leader. Focus on what I have to do running a great company. Focus on the things that are important to you in life, family. There's a lot of clickbait out there. There's a lot of nonsense, and there's a lot of irrelevant people. And most of the time, those fade from existence pretty quickly.
Yeah, and even the BBC here, 24 hours after your father won that election, I was watching the news in my hotel room, and the headline was, Donald Trump puts no price on his plan to deport 11 million immigrants from the US. The key word there being illegal. So even 24 hours after, the BBC were at it again.
Yeah. It's exactly why unconventional media is winning the race and winning quickly against all odds. Stations like the BBC, I think if you fast forward 10 years, if they keep it up and they show no independent thought, no independent journalism, are going to fail to exist. And you remember me saying that. Again, stations like CNN, which were once great media outlets, are almost irrelevant in the largest superpower in the world. They're almost irrelevant. I think they're going to fade to exist very, very quickly, because of the statements that they made that are just categorically rejected by the vast majority of sane-minded individuals who see statements like that and laugh.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much GB News you watch or your father catches any clips online. Have you seen anything?
I actually have, and we're a big fan.
Oh,
we're a big fan of a bunch of people on your network. So
yeah, Nigel included,
So,
I suspect.
it's good that you're holding down one side of the political aisle, which no one else focuses on. So.
Well, but I guess the difference is we're not just going to, put people on a pedestal and look at them starry-eyed. I think, as you said, you need to have a rational, nuanced conversation about things, which I guess where a lot of traditional media, such as the BBC, is falling foul recently, and that's where GB News is trying to fill the gap. I guess just bring some common sense back to proceedings. Talking about legacy media and new media, your father, of course, went on Joe Rogan, Theo Von, et cetera, Adin Ross. Are the reports correct? Was Barron the mastermind behind that, Barron Trump?
Yeah. Well, Barron was certainly behind some of the kind of young millennials that my father was going on, and absolutely he pushed that, and I pushed for a lot of the really a lot of the podcasts. I mean, if I poll my friends, my closest friends in the world, most of them are not consuming media vis-a-vis kind of the traditional channels anymore. They're just not. It's either too bombastic, too one-sided, no independent thought, too expensive in so many cases, right? In the United States, you might pay $400 a month for cable. Who wants to pay when you can stream? You can stream Hulu, you can stream Netflix, you can stream YouTube right now. You can do that for a fraction of the cost. With Elon Musk, with Starlink, again, that's going to change the way media is consumed, because it's, you have effectively high-speed Wi-Fi for virtually nothing relative to kind of the old traditional cable providers, literally hard cable providers that were wired into people's homes.
And all you need is an iPhone. I was in Times Square on election night doing live hits back to the UK.
Absolutely.
All I had was an iPhone,
Absolutely.
a decent 5G connection, and a ring light, and we got through it.
Absolutely. You have people consuming their media on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Those have become big channels. You have so much people that are consuming, topics that they want to, interested in, want to learn about, want to hear about on YouTube. Again, streaming these channels. And so the media is being consumed very differently. And we knew that if we were going to be successful in this election, we had to change our outreach. And so, not to say that we didn't do a lot of conventional media, but we did a tremendous amount of unconventional media vis-a-vis those podcasts and kind of, smaller channels. Very specific channels. There are religious channels. There are sports channels. I can't tell you how many different kind of hard-hitting channels there are that have massive viewerships. I mean, even look at crypto community within the United States and around the world. They have several channels and they gravitate toward them, and and they're consumed by those channels, and they consume the media of those channels, and so a lot of our approach was to be unconventional, and we were, and clearly it worked.
Yeah, and obviously Kamala totally avoiding any of the new kind of media, refusing to go on Joe Rogan, and the results speak for themselves. So it's fair to say you and your father and your family and the team, GB News fans.
We're GB News fans.
Good. Let me ask you about Joe Biden, because I think reports today suggest that Ukraine has fired the first long-range US missiles into Russian territory. And I guess the feeling is it kind of feels like it's a passing shot from the outgoing administration to cause as much trouble as they can before they go. Is that accurate? What's your father's assessment? Have you spoken to your dad to say about the Russia situation?
Yeah, the Russia situation is incredibly sad. And my father, I can tell you, just wants to stop the death and destruction. It's just that simple. So oftentimes he'll get hit in the United States. Well, you're siding with Putin, you're siding with Zelensky. I'm not, and he literally says, I'm not siding with anybody. You know what I'm siding with? I want to have young boys stop dying in dirty trenches for no reason whatsoever. And I'm going to stop sending US money, overseas, hundreds of billions of dollars at a clip. You know where I want to do? I want to take that money. I want to invest in our schools so we have the best educational system in the world. I want to invest in our roads. I want to invest in productive things, not death, destruction, and 155 millimeter howitzer shells ripping through residential buildings and turning them into dust. And I can tell you that on the top of my father's priorities is ending the chaos, not just there, but also between, Israel and Palestine, and Iran and so many other places that, just want to seek death for no reason whatsoever. It's counterproductive. And so I don't know what Biden's thinking. I question virtually everything that he's done over the last 4 years. I mean, in fact, if you were to take the contrarian position to just about every one of his policies, we'd be a substantially better country right now than we are.
Yeah.
Hence the reason my father was elected. So I don't know what he was thinking, allowing them to use U.S. missiles deep into Russian territory. Do I think it's brilliant? No, I don't think it's brilliant.
What would you like to see the UK do on that front? Because Sir Keir Starmer today, right now, is under pressure to follow suit and give permission.
Yeah.
What do you want the UK to do? What does your father want Sir Keir Starmer to do?
That's good news about me. I don't need to make these decisions.
Yeah.
I can run the greatest properties in the world and not have to think about
what's your feeling?
The missile strategy of the UK as it pertains to the largest nuclear superpower. I would urge everybody to remember that Russia is the largest nuclear superpower, tied exactly with the United States in terms of the amount of weapons that we each have. I think it's an awfully silly thing when countries like the UK are, suggesting that we start launching missiles deep into Russian territory. I don't think many good things could come out of that. But that's just my gut intuition.
And I guess we'd be turning to you if it did hit the fan. I don't think personally the UK is strong enough to take Russia on in a war. So
yeah, it's this is why you need strong leaders to come into power in the United States. It's just that simple. It's why you need the nonsense to end. And it's why you need somebody who can actually have the conversation. The problem right now is no one's having the conversation. Who's having the conversation? Conversations can solve just about everything. Perspective can solve just about it. No one can even pick up the phone to Putin right now, and it's very sad. I can tell you the one person who can, it's Donald Trump. But no one's even trying right now, and it's every day it's just how can we spend more money? How can we send more missiles? How can we allow a new provocative act? It'd be really nice if somebody had the backbone, courage, and the respect to be able to pick up the phone and end these conflicts sensibly. And again, it's what my father will do. Hopefully even before he takes on office, but certainly,
So I was going to ask, do you know if your father has spoken to Putin yet? Because there were some reports that post-election he may try and sort that Ukraine situation out before January.
I don't believe he's spoken to him yet.
Okay. What about your just going back to the farmers so we can get a bit more support for them or your thoughts at least on the farmers. What's your message for the farmers? Have you got any words of advice or wisdom for them in their fights against what's going on?
No, we love you and we're sorry. No different than farmers in the U.S. We love them and we're sorry. They were treated horribly. So oftentimes the farms were taken away. So oftentimes regulation killed their businesses, made it impossible for them to put food on the table, made it profitable for them to run profitable enterprises. They were taxed to death. They were regulated to death. The cost of fuel killed them, absolutely killed them. Inheritance tax, which my father actually eliminated for farmers in the United States.
So he scrapped it.
So many farmers were land wealthy and cash poor. And all of a sudden you'd have the patriarch or the matriarch of a family die. The farm would be in their name. And all of a sudden they had to pay 50% inheritance tax on a massive piece of land. And what do you think happened? There was no longer a second generation or a third generation of farmers. That farm was sold, typically to a big corporation.
Yeah.
And the true kind of very wholesome farmer who wanted to work their land with their own hands failed to exist. And it went to some massive conglomerate. And that was not good for society. And so my father eliminated the inheritance tax as it related to the transfer of agriculture, really, in the United States. He helped them tremendously. He also helped with massive subsidies that were super important. He helped by deregulating the farms. I mean, they were being buried in paperwork in the United States. He deregulated that. Obviously, when you brought down the price of oil and gas, it helped tremendously because the amount of diesel being burned in the tractors and so on and so forth. And he was the greatest champion of farmers in our country. And I see what's happening to the farmers over here, and it directly mirrors so much of kind of the strife that so many of the farmers in the United States had for so long.
Exactly the same. And the rhetoric here is that the farmers are rich. They've got 4, 5, 6 million pounds estates. But as you said, they're not waltzing around in quad bikes going on holidays to Dubai. It's all in the asset. They're not cash rich. What is the agenda as a businessman? So the UK Treasury is making just 500 million pounds from this tax on farmers. Not a lot in the grand scheme of things. Do you think there's an alternative or ulterior agenda against farming around the world? Just lastly.
Yeah, is there an alternative agenda? Sure. I don't know. A lot of governments have come out to almost be anti-farmer, and I haven't quite figured out why. I mean, it feels like they're some of the greatest people you have in society, right? I mean, there's people that wake up at the crack of dawn, one of the hardest jobs, tough. Any farmer you've ever met. I mean, a real farmer, not like fake farmer, right? Not like, I've got a flat in London and I've got a little tomato bush on the back porch. I'm talking about real farmer, people who work the land. These are tough, gritty, hardworking people who generally are incredibly patriotic, love family, love God, and just want to work and be left alone. And again, my art goes out to them because these are real people who are doing the right thing. They're not lazy. They're not trying to live off a subsidy. They're not trying to ask for a free handout. They want to make it, and they're willing to put in the time. They're willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears. But so oftentimes they throw obstacle after obstacle in their face and not allow them to do it. And so, listen, I'm not nearly as close to obviously the situation over here with the farmers. Aside from the fact that I know it does very greatly parallel the very same problem that we had in the United States, and my father really solved in 2016, 2017. But what you asked, what I would say to the farmer, we love you. And I think across and universally across the UK, I'm not sure if I've ever met a farmer, somebody who's heavily involved in agriculture that didn't love our family. And didn't love Donald Trump and everything he stood for. So I guess my message to them would be go out, fight like hell, make your voices heard, and hopefully you'll achieve the same result that we achieved on the opposite side of the pond. But you have a friend in us, and you have a friend in our family.
Good to hear. Very good to hear. And it still instills confidence in us. Have you done your Christmas shopping finally?
I've done no Christmas shopping. I got to do my post-election sleep before I can get to Christmas shopping, but I'll get to it at some point.
I'll tell you what, the best, I mean, if you want to pass the message on to your dad, the best Christmas gift the UK could get would be a tariff-free trade deal. If you could pass that on.
Pass that along. So if you can pass a message along on your end, maybe be a little kind and maybe treat other countries and other world leaders with a little respect. And typically honey attracts more than vinegar. And I think people could probably live by those words.
Just for clarification, who's that to?
It's
It's government, Keir Starmer?
It's to a number of people.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Okay.
Be kind. We have got the greatest relationship of two superpowers, arguably ever. We have a union that's never been divided. Don't try for your own politically motivated purposes.
Great. We'll end on that note. Harry Trump, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Good to see you.
You too. Thank you very much.